Didn't announce.
Good morning, everyone. This is, I guess, the first of potentially two third quarter meetings of the New York State Fire Prevention and Building Code Council for 2024. My name is Matt Tebow. I'm the designated chair of this body pursuant to appointment by Secretary Walter Mosley. Okay, let's start with Kevin reading the roll to establish quorum.
Matt Tebow,
I'm here.
James Cable,
Here.
Vincent Rappuccillo,
Here.
Joseph Toomey,
Here.
Tim DeRuscher, here. Robert Hughes,
Here.
Joseph Palazzolo,
Here.
Keith Wen,
Here.
Michael Sabatino,
Here.
Dominic Marinelli,
Here.
somebody's name. Me. Thank you. Joseph DeStefano. Here. Right, now we have 11. And we have Bill Tyne, Patrick Dolan, and Sean Hamlin not in attendance.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. All right, I don't, since we only met 28 days ago, I don't have any announcements today. Kevin, why don't you walk through the conduct of meeting for me?
Okay, so I guess members not in attendance in Albany, if you could please make sure you've muted your microphones. And if you wish to speak, please unmute, state your full name, and then speak. At this time, we have 6 participants anticipated to be giving public comments today. So we'll limit the amount of time to 3 minutes for each public commenter. And I did paste into the chat the order in which people will be called on when we get to that time. So if your name is not on that list and you still wish to address the co-counsel during the public comment period, please send a chat in to myself so I can add you to the list. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I'll take it back. I actually do take it back. I do have an announcement. Peniota is not here today, so I'm joined on my right by David Gonzalez, who's Deputy Counsel of the Department of State. On his right is Ben Kaczynski, who is our Energy Code Counsel. He's here to assist, and he has further assistance if we need it. So hopefully we can manage without Peniota today. Okay. Kevin, are there any agenda changes?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna run through the agenda very quickly for the members so we know what we're in for today. We're gonna try and move through it quickly, but it's gonna be a bit of a busy day. So we have the draft minutes we need to approve from June 28th, 2024. We'll do that in a second. We're gonna have a division update by John. I don't believe council is chiming in there. We don't have an update today. No update from council today, which is actually pretty a good thing. Okay, we have we follow that with Uniform Code and Energy Code development update. As members will note, we posted the NRD, recommended NRD last night. That, staff worked very diligently on the last month to get that done. I know we wanted to get it a little sooner for you. It took until the moment we posted it. There's no expectation that the council would have read that overnight. It is thousands of pages. It's sitting next to me right here. So the goal today is to have Kevin brief you on the Uniform Code, to have Emma brief you on the major changes suggested in the Energy Code, and then to gather your comments over the next 4 months, right? So we're gonna leave the notice of rule and development open until at least the end of September. It's gonna be 60 days from now. From there, we're going to assess those comments. We're going to provide you with what we hear over the next 2 months. And then we're going to go into a sort of fast development of a notice of proposed rulemaking. The goal for that is late November or early December. You'll note that we have an early December meeting. So we're going to see if that works, or we can move it up a little bit. Then I'm going to prognosticate a little further in the future, which is very dangerous at this point. But then we have a March meeting. That March meeting would be our first opportunity to adopt the code. I don't know if we're going to be there at that point. We might have to do a revised rulemaking. We'll find out as we go through this process. I actually put together what I thought the schedule would look like last night. It is very tight and there is a lot going on at the same time. So once we finish that update, jumping back to the agenda, we move into SEEKR, State Environmental Quality Review Act. Thank you. See, I knew council, right on for me. We're going to move into that. We need to take a vote today. That vote is to make ourselves or make the Department of State the lead agency.
Code council actually would be the lead agency.
Okay.
Motion for the code council to be the lead agency. So environmental quality review requires designation of a lead agency, and it's the lead agency that makes the decisions that are required under SEEKR.
Okay. And then we're also going to be reviewing the major subject list there. Following that, we move into that's 3 votes, right?
Yes.
3 votes. Thanks, Ben. Ben's going to be handling Peniota's duties, and he promises me he's going to read as fast as she does. The 6th agenda item is the public comment period. We have 5 on the list right now. Future meetings is the 7th. We'll talk about what we're doing there. Both of those dates that you're seeing on the agenda right now are very tentative and will likely be moved around based on availability of members as well as where we need things to fall in a schedule. Things are very tight when we're basically running a SEEKR and a SAPA process at the same time. And then other business, and we'll adjourn and not see each other. We'll wish each other a happy summer and hopefully all have a happy summer until we see each other in the fall. Okay, that's where we are for today. I'm going to move us to agenda item 2, which is the draft minutes of June 28th, 2024. Are there any recommended changes from the council members? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to motion? Okay, Tim makes the motion to approve the minutes of June 28th, 2024. Can I have a second? Joe Tooney seconds. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, staying.
And Mayor abstains because it was not praised last month. Okay, so that passes to 10. Okay, thank you for that. Let's move to division update, agenda 3. Mr. Dario on camera.
Yes, good morning, Chair Tebow, co-council members. I just have a couple things to update you on from last month. The first item is regarding the Energy Storage System Work Group. Just this week, the governor's interagency fire safety work group for energy storage system released the final recommendations for the fire code. Kevin included a link in that final document in the package that was sent to you yesterday. Staff has been working extremely hard to incorporate the changes and develop the code language into the current rule and development. So all the recommendations are reflected in the current rule and development that was just released. I'll thank staff for all their efforts to get to this point. Also, I'm just going to note that just this morning, the governor's office published a press release regarding the work group recommendations, and that the recommendations do appear in the rule and development. So the next thing I have is the single exit study. We're continuing to work on the draft RFP to obtain a consultant to perform the study. I just wanted to thank co-council member DeRusher for spending some time to locate some of the documents and research papers that were done as part of the code development process a few years ago. So that will be very helpful. Thanks again, Tim, for that. Spending the time for that. Appreciate it. Next, as we move forward with the code development process for developing the codes, I just wanted to mention that we did receive all the FrameMaker files from ICC. Staff may not be happy to hear that because that's going to be what they're going to be probably working on starting Monday. But anyway, this includes all 9 code books in ASHRAE 90.1, which will modify to create the New York specific code books. One thing I will note, and if we haven't mentioned that before, is that the format of the printed books will change from 2 columns as it currently is to a single column, and this is similar to what you'll see on the online version. And basically, that's what the format that ICC is using for the 2024 code. So online version, you won't really see a difference, but for the print version, there will be a difference just in the format. And the last item I have is regarding the ICC hearings, which I mentioned before. Last meeting was going to be held in the fall. Staff currently has about 15 active proposed changes to the Group A. And with everything else that was going on, they were able to submit public comments on about 10 proposals by the deadline to get those in. Again, these are the Group A codes, which is the IBC, IFC, fuel gas code, mechanical, plumbing, and residential mechanical. So that's all I have for now, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for John? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, John. Okay, I'll move us to agenda item 4. Let the fun begin. So this is the Uniform Code and Energy Code updates from Kevin and Emma. I think they rolled dice to see who would go first. And I think you won.
Just happened to be the winner.
You're the winner. Okay, so Kevin, start walking us through the Uniform Code, please.
Right, so the first thing I was going to do was just kind of walk through kind of where we've been and how we've gotten to the point that we're at. So I just wanted to recap the process and the timeline of development of the Uniform Code thus far. I think it's important to understand when reviewing this stack of documents, kind of the path to get here. So March of 2022, I gave a presentation to the Code Council along with a summary of the notable changes based on the 21 International Model Code books. At that time, based on the pending legislation that we had in front of us, the start of the development process for the 2024 ICC model codes, and the projected timelines, the Code Council decided to base the next version of the Uniform Code and Energy Code on the 2024 International Model Codes rather than the 21 codes. So staff began to do a more detailed review of the 21 code books and continued to review and participate, as John is mentioning, even with the 27 and 24 ICC code development process, which was scheduled to be completed by the end of 2023. And that included attending the committee action hearings, public comment hearings, preparing and defending the proposal, and reviewing the monographs and proposals of the International Model Codes. So then at the March 2023 meeting, the Code Council was presented with the first draft version of this Notice of Rule and Development documents. These version 1 documents contained a list of the proposed changes to the 2020 versions of the codes that were anticipated based on the draft 2024 codes from ICC and their code development process. So staff worked closely with ICC to kind of streamline the integration of those potential changes into a draft NRD. Now, because, as everyone knows, the 2020 New York State codes are based on the 2018 ICC codes, so version 2 that was released in the June and September 2023 meeting then started to blend the 21 and 24 ICC codes together into one document. So that gave us the version 2 and version 2 and 2.1 documents. And then since then, staff has been working to kind of weave in the New York State specific amendments necessary based on state and Code Council policies and initiatives, the new and historic statutory requirements, and the actual published 2024 code language. And so version 3 of the smaller books we discussed and presented at the March 2024 meeting, and we've updated that again since then. So now, here we are now, we have the final draft NRD documents that were prepared for all of the books that are incorporated into the Uniform Code and Energy Code. And the NRD, as Matt has said, has been posted to the division's website to officially request the public and the Code Council to review and comment on the draft language. That also mentioned to keep in mind that these documents include just proposed changes to the 2020 versions of the Energy Code and Uniform Code. They're not intended to be all of the code language. So if language is not shown in these documents and is not shown as modified in these documents, it should be understood that the language is to remain the same in the proposed 2024 version of the codes as it was in the 2020 version. With the NRD posted yesterday, of course, everyone can see the stack of information that Matt is thumbing through now. Nobody, I don't expect anybody to have actual comments on these documents today. The point of this process is to just kind of present this to the public and the Code Council today. September 24th is the deadline that we posted online for the NRD for, comments to be received. And so the next 60 days is where we anticipate starting to get those comments. So I'm going to pause there because that's just kind of the overview. And then my next plan is to dive into, a 2-page summary of the thousands of pages of documents that we have. So does anyone have any initial questions?
Right.
So now everyone bear with me as I summarize thousands of pages into 2 pages. So, I'll start with chapter 1. We did a separate document for chapter 1 instead of including them within each book themselves, just so everyone could see all of the changes to chapter 1 in one location. The main goal in developing the chapter 1s was to try to align with the ICC model codes where possible, but still keeping the New York State specific language necessary for the New York State specific administration and enforcement for the code. Based on the recent legislation, we clarified the scope of the uniform to make sure that it includes all grease interceptors, which was a slight change from how it was done previously. In line with recent formal code interpretations in chapter 1 of the residential code, we clarified when a state agency has regulations pertaining to the classification of residential buildings and structures, that the scope of the residential code still remains the code, so it governs the scope as to what is allowed to be built to the residential code. And then the last thing was just a general standardization of language between all of the books so that they can all kind of align in chapter 1s together. Next, I'll jump into residential code. So we've added ICC language for residential sprinkler requirements, including New York State specific language for Appendix J references. And I will note, I may say Appendix J periodically. Technically, within the new code books, they changed how they numbered the appendices, and now it's Appendix BO. So we also removed Chapter 11 in the reference to the Energy Code, instead provide a general reference to the Energy Code language. Language was added for sea level rise in tidal coastal areas. Expanded flood hazard areas to include the 500-year floodplain. Added provisions for fire safety concerns for car chargers, including emergency shut-off breakers. We had several pool and spa changes. One of them was reducing the mesh size of the barrier requirements for chain link fences to align with the ICC International Pool and Spa Code. We removed the need to alarm second-story windows. We also tweaked the language a little bit, talking about if the window itself is located the sill is located 48 inches or more off of the finished floor elevation, that they didn't need to be alarmed. And we updated the suction outlet protection requirements to align with industry standards and the Virginia Baker Grant Act and the internationally recognized standards on the subject. So updates to Appendix J and BO was to align with the ICC changes, and based on historic technical support that we've given on Appendix J, we made some updates and modifications to it to help it flow better. We modified the owner-occupied exceptions to remove the way that was currently written had some potential for arbitrarily how it would be enforced. So we clarified that language and added some new language to it. Added in exceptions for the hot tub and spa barrier requirements. If everyone remembers I think it might have been an emergency rule or interim rulemaking that we did based on new legislation to allow hot tubs and spas to not have a permanent barrier installed if they have a blockable safety cover provided. We modified the whole house mechanical ventilation requirements to be a balanced system and added a pointer to the Energy Code. Updated plumbing flow rate fixtures, plumbing fixture flow rates, and updated Appendix E, which is the state's manufactured housing program requirements. Slowly pausing to see if I see any hands. Okay. Building code. So similar to the residential code, some of the things that we did the residential code do apply to the building code as well, such as the sea level rise and the 500-year floodplain language was added there. Working with Dominic, we removed the New York State specific type B accessible apartments, but increased the type A accessible apartments to 20%. And, started to align that more closely with ICC's requirements. We had added similar language for fire safety concerns for car chargers with emergency shut-off breakers. Language for adult changing stations was provided, including locations where they are to be required to be installed and the accessibility provisions surrounding those. Additional accessibility provisions that were added based on incorporation of the newer ICC A117.1 2017 version provides for accessible provisions for EV charging stations, with wheelchair clearance dimensions and turning radius modifications, revised and added requirements for accessible water closets, grab bars, flush controls, dispensers, roll-in showers, clearances, and assisted toilet and bathing facilities. There is new language in there allowing for the use of mass timber and taller applications. Again, the exception for hot tubs and spas and barrier requirements was also added to the building code, but it applies there as well. There's a new informational appendix for educational occupancy acoustics, and then additional language to clarify provisions for occupiable roofs for egress, accessibility, additions, or alterations. Slowly pivoting into the fire code.
Yep, and the mass timber was a ICC, reverse
Yes.
ICC, right?
Correct. So fire code, we had some new legislation come through for high-rise building evacuation plans, accessibility features for those. So we worked with several advocacy groups to develop language and updates based on that new legislation. So that's been incorporated. We incorporated, as John had mentioned, the statewide ESS fire safety work group recommendations, which at a high level included adoption of the 2024 IFC language, incorporation of the 23 version of NFPA 855, and then there were several other additional enhancements that the group had recommended that I think John's reviewed a couple of times with the code council. And the final recommendation, like John said, you guys had a link provided in your meeting packet, so if you wanted to take a look and review that, that was. We also updated and cleaned up the carbon monoxide requirements. Actually did that throughout all of the codes, so it's a little more consolidated. And we pulled in 2027 ICC code language for carbon monoxide requirements. There's new provisions for powered micro mobility devices, including charging and storing locations and addressing hazards associated with the charging of them, also, as well as lithium-ion battery storage and collection requirements. And then the last thing for fire code was inflatable amusement devices requirements for operating permits and things like that. So about halfway through. So.
Doing great, Kevin. Great.
Existing building code has a new informational appendix on temporary use of buildings in emergency scenarios. We aligned the historic building definition with the energy code requirement for the energy code definition that has been shared previously. As I mentioned before, the general organization on carbon monoxide and pointers to the fire code, and then pulled carbon monoxide into a general portion of the existing building code, whereas previously it was kind of scattered throughout the whole code. It's now consolidated in one location. And there's a new, and same thing with building code, there's a new informational appendix on educational occupancy acoustics. Property maintenance code has a new appendix for parking garage condition assessments, which if everyone remembers, there's a section in 1203, which is the administration enforcement provisions, that provides for parking garage condition assessments. What we did was pull out the provision that probably belong best in the code rather than administration and enforcement. So we'll be able to separate that out next time we do an update to 1203 and be able to keep the code provisions within the uniform code and administration and enforcement within 1203. We added the language for grease trap interceptors based on the recent legislation, clarified the swimming pool provisions, and updated the pointers to the residential code and building code. We also updated, we've gotten some questions on definitions of inoperable motor vehicles as far as what that actually means and how that applies. And so we've updated the language there and added some definitions to make it cleaner to understand how that provision is applicable. And we adjusted the owner occupied exceptions, just like I said, in the residential code to align with the property maintenance codes. Right. Mechanical code, there's ICC modifying language for the use of A2L refrigerants. We added in language for MERV 13 ready equipment in certain occupancies. And also in here, we also modified the whole house mechanical ventilation requirements for balance systems and added pointers to the energy code. Fuel gas code, very straightforward, aligned with ICC and aligned with NFPA 50. Plumbing, again, grease interceptors, we added the language from the legislation that we used to have in 1229, I think it was, pulled it into the plumbing code provisions. And we also had some new language that we proposed to ICC this time around for the 27 code for the cured in place pipelining reference standards that brought to our attention that there are several standards that may be missing from the code. And this would help broaden it a little bit to allow different types of cured in place pipelining to and then similar to the residential code, updated the plumbing fixture flow rates. So two more categories. Second last one, uniform code provision for rail stations has a revised language. The proposal right now is to keep that as a standalone in 1228 where it is and just update it to a 2024 version. And so within that update, the highlighted changes would be updating language regarding turnstiles and fare control areas, which includes specific language that promotes the use of accessible turnstiles and fare gates. Provisions to add to address fire safety concerns for the construction of stairways and elevator hoistways that are within the public way, and allowance for the addition of platforms to address operational needs, increasing the total exit time for trains evacuating evacuating. And then the last document that's in that package is a reference standard document. And we developed that based on the comments we received at a couple of previous co-council meetings asking about specific reference standards, what versions we were using, and what versions are going to be in the proposed code. So that document actually walks through each book and every reference standard that's in the back of the book. If there are any title changes, if there's any version update changes, 22, 24 version, whichever it is. So that should be able to more clearly identify exactly which versions of the reference standards are proposed to be included.
Okay, that was a lot in a short period of time. Thousands of pages, and there's a synopsis in 2 pages. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't expect code council members at this time to be locked in to the detail of these at all. So if you have questions, certainly Kevin will answer them. Otherwise, we will work with you over the next few months until the next code council meeting and the one after that. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is that document, which I thought was very good summary, is that available for co-council members?
I was about to say that I think it would be good if we gave them at least that. It would be a good way for them to find things within these pages. So yeah, we'll get that out to you guys.
Thank you.
Later today. If Kevin is still awake after the meeting, we'll get it to you guys today. And the same for Emma's that she's about to dig into. Okay, before I call on Emma, we'll take a deep breath. All right, Emma, let's go with the energy code. That's
the fun stuff.
this one over here. Yeah. Okay. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Good morning, everyone. And some of this is going to sound a little repetitive in light of what Kevin just said, but not everything is exactly the same. Three of the documents that Kevin sent you yesterday pertain to the energy code. The volume of those 2 documents is a culmination of a multi-version process developed in parallel with the International Energy Conservation Code 2024 update. With the publication date of the 2024 IECC is still pending. By way of recap, slightly different timeline from what Kevin gave you. We provided you a version 1.0 in March of 2023 that contained code changes that were made as a result of the revisions to Article 11 of the New York State Energy Law that were made on July 5th of 2022 and commonly known as the Advanced Building Codes Act. They mainly included modifications to the treatment of historic structures that we developed in consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, the consolidation of exceptions, and the addition of greenhouse gas emissions reduction to the scope statement. We provided a version 2.0 in June of 2023 that contained modifications based on the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code update and other proposed changes that were received by the Division of Building Standards and Codes since the adoption of the 2020 Energy Conservation Code. At the June 28th meeting, Paniota presented the provisions for the fossil fuel prohibition that are codified in Article 11 of the State Energy Law and Section 378 of the Executive Law. And they will be set forth expressly in parts 1240 of Title 19 and Kevin's at part 1229 for the Uniform Code. A notice of rule in development for those proposed changes has been published on our website. This final draft on Matt's hands and on your computers contains the balance of changes for your consideration and developed for the purpose of posting a notice of rule in development for the Code Council and the Department of State. Like I said, the document is separated into three parts. There's the residential provisions of the IECC, the commercial provisions of the IECC, and another document for the modifications to ASHRAE 90.1. And for the court reporter, that's ASHRAE. And the quick reference guide at the beginning of each one of those parts will give you a brief synopsis of the section numbers, the topics, the nature, and the origin or reason for the changes. And those are pretty lengthy. I think the commercial is about 9 pages of that quick reference guide. But we have, what I'm going to present to you is a summary of the 11 most significant changes in addition to the fossil fuel prohibition that Paniota already presented. So I'll present to you the most significant changes, not everything that is on that quick reference guide. You will hear some of these are new topics in the model codes. These are new additions. Some are the familiar areas of energy efficiency improvements that we've seen at every typical energy code update. And some are New York State specific amendments, including provisions of New York Stretch 2020 in collaboration with NYSERDA to achieve energy savings greater than the most recently published IECC for residential buildings and ASHRAE 90.1 for commercial buildings. This is to comply with the New York State Energy Law and the Climate Action Council Scoping Plan of December 2022, developed as a result of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or CLCPA. So one is that there's a new requirement in the model codes for renewable energy of not less than 0.75 watts per square foot for commercial buildings. Two, it's also for commercial buildings, a new requirement for the documentation and mitigation of the energy losses associated with thermal bridges or interruptions in the building thermal envelope. Three are, as happens every code cycle, more restrictive building thermal envelope requirements, and you will see more increased values for insulation and also requirements for air leakage testing. Number four, given recent climate data reporting consistently higher temperatures, 8 counties that were previously in climate zone 6 are now in climate zone 5. And specifically, those are Allegheny, Broome, Cattaraugus, Schoharie, Schuyler, Steuben, Tompkins, and Wyoming. Number 5, another new provision in the model codes is that applicants who are following the prescriptive compliance path will also be required to accrue a minimum number of so-called additional efficiency credits chosen from a list of options. This was new in 2021, and of course, that list of credits and options was modified in 2024. 6 is a new requirement for energy recovery ventilation, or ERV, in residential buildings in climate zone 6, and for commercial buildings with some exceptions. Number 7, there are new limits on the use of electric resistance for space heating. Number 8, because the federal standards for federally preempted equipment have been updated since we adopted the 2020 codes, the applicable tables reflect increased minimum efficiency requirements for equipment such as gas-fired water heaters, hot water boilers, air conditioning and refrigeration equipment, and other federally preempted equipment. Number 9, there are increased equipment efficiency requirements for commercial elevators and escalators. Number 10, there's a separate electric metering requirement for low-rise multifamily buildings consistent with the existing requirements for multifamily buildings of 4 stories or more. And number 11, there are increased lighting efficiency requirements for new buildings and new thresholds for alterations when compliance with the lighting requirements is triggered. I will look forward to receiving your comments and working with you through the next 2 months on this proposed changes. Thank you, and thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Emma. Does anyone have questions for Emma at this time? Again, I know that was a lot packed into a very short period, and she just summarized this. So then that's double spaced, 12 point, or excuse me, single spaced at 12 points. So
Saw something happen in New York City, but I don't know if that means they had a question.
did someone in New York City have a question? No. Okay. I see China shaking her head. Okay. Okay. I'm actually gonna take a chair's prerogative for half a second. They just did something in about 20 minutes that they worked on for the last 2 years. It was an incredible amount of work last month. I don't think either one of them slept, or their teams for that matter. So I just want to thank both of them for an incredible job. Really leading this effort has really shown your mettle, and I thank you. Okay. If there are no other questions, we're gonna jump back. I'm gonna go all the way back to my thing here. We're gonna move to the next agenda item, which is seeker.
Okay, so members should have received in their packet 6 documents related to seeker: the short environmental impact assessment form, parts 1 and 2 for both the energy code and the uniform code, the draft notice of intent for the generic environmental impact statement, and the draft scope for the generic environmental impact statement. So I'm just going to go over some background on the seeker process. The Department of State, after reviewing the upcoming rulemakings to update the State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and the State Energy Conservation Construction Code, concluded that a review is required under the provisions of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which is also known as seeker. Seeker requires state government agencies to examine the environmental impacts along with the social and economic considerations for actions during their discretionary review. The adoption of rules and regulations is considered an action under seeker. Environment does not just pertain to natural resources, but also includes how people use and relate to their surroundings, including but not limited to land, air, water, minerals, noise, resources of agriculture, archaeological, historic, or aesthetic significance, existing community or neighborhood character, and human health. Agencies must follow the multi-step seeker decision process, which requires them to assess the environmental significance of all actions they have the power to approve, fund, or directly assume. The multi-step seeker decision process includes, but is not limited to, classifying the action, completing the correct environmental assessment form, coordinating review, determining significance, and scoping the draft environmental impact statement. Draft generic environmental impact statement may be used to assess the impacts of an entire program, having wide application or restricting the range of future alternative policies that will affect a wide range of resources for geographic areas. The rulemaking to update the Uniform Code and Energy Code would not fall under the Type 2 list under 19 NYC-RR Part 1263. Therefore, we believe would appropriately be classified as an unlisted action. The lead agency is the involved agency, in this case DOS, which is responsible for determining whether an environmental impact statement will be required, and if so, for its preparation and filing. The department has concluded the upcoming rulemaking, which includes several proposed changes to the Uniform Code and Energy Code, including flood provisions for seacoast residents and solar requirements for commercial buildings, could have a potential impact on the environment, and a draft GEIS should be prepared. The draft GEIS will be used to analyze reasonable alternatives to the proposed actions and to identify ways to avoid or reduce adverse impacts. The department, through the seeker process, will establish a clear and transparent record of the department's decision-making process as it relates to environmental impacts and strongly encourages the public to participate. For the purposes of the rulemakings to update the Uniform Code and Energy Code, the department recommends that the Code Council designate the Code Council as the lead agency for the purpose of environmental review under seeker, and for the Department of State to act administratively on behalf of the Code Council to file, post, and publish any supporting documents. Also to request the department to file positive declarations for the short environmental assessment forms for both the Uniform Code and Energy Code, update rulemakings as submitted to the Code Council prior to this meeting. As I stated, those are in your packet. And finally, request the department to publish on the department's website, as well in the environmental notice bulletin, the draft scope and draft notice of intent to prepare draft generic environmental impact for proposed amendments of the Uniform Code and Energy Code, and to receive public comments to the draft scope up until September 6th of this year. As part of the seeker process, the department has drafted the notice of intent and draft scope to obtain public comments before preparing the draft GEIS. The draft GEIS will be issued along with the notice of proposed rulemakings for both the Uniform Code and Energy Code updates, and public comments will be received again. With respect to the seeker timing, with SAPA, the public comment period will run concurrently. The Code Council will need to accept the final GEIS prior to filing the notices of adoption for the rulemaking.
Are there any questions with regard to the seeker process before we get into the motions that we have to make? Done. All right. Okay, as we normally do this process, I'm gonna, as the member, I'm gonna make a motion, but I'm gonna have Ben read them because he's better at this than I am. At least that's what I'm told, so. Kevin, Ben?
Okay.
First motion, please.
That the Code Council, in regard to Agenda Item 5, designate the Code Council as the lead agency for compliance with Article 8 of the Environment Conservation Law, and have the Department of State act administratively on behalf of the Code Council to file, post, and publish any supporting documents.
Okay, I'll make that motion. May I have a second? Joe Toomey seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Right, hearing none. I'm gonna have Kevin, these are recorded votes, so I'm gonna have Kevin call the roll.
Matt Tebow,
I vote yes.
James Cable,
Yes.
Joseph DeStefano,
Yes.
Joseph Toomey,
Yes.
Timothy DeRicher,
Yes.
Robert Hughes,
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli,
Yes.
Vincent Rappaciulo,
Yes.
Joseph Palazzola,
Yes.
Keith Wen,
Yes.
Michael Sabatino.
Yes.
Did I miss anybody?
Okay, we are now the lead agency. Vote of 11, okay. Now I'm gonna make the second motion and Ben's gonna read it. Ben, please.
That the Code Council find and determine that the proposed action in Agenda Item 5 may result in a significant environmental impact, potentially have a significant adverse effect on any significant fish or wildlife habitat, scenic resource of statewide significance, or an agricultural land or area included in an approved local waterfront revitalization program, and that Kevin Dwyer Clark be authorized to sign and deliver on behalf of the Code Council and the Department of State with respect to the Uniform Code update, the State Environmental Quality Review Act short environmental assessment form indicating that no or small impact may occur in response to questions 1 and 4 through 11, and indicating moderate or large impact may occur in response to question 2 relating to change in the use or intensity of use of land, and question 3 relating to the impairment of character or quality of the existing community in part 2 of the form. In determining in part 3 of the form, some of the code regulating construction projects in the Uniform Code may result in significant adverse impacts upon the environment. With respect to the Energy Code update, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, a short environmental assessment form indicating that no or small impact may occur in response to questions 1 and 4 through 11, and indicating moderate or large impact may occur in response to questions 2 relating to change in the use or intensity of use of land, and question 3 relating to the impairment of character or quality of the existing community in part 2 of the form, and determining in part 3 of the form, some of the code regulating projects in the Energy Code may result in significant adverse impacts upon the environment.
May I make that motion? May I have a second? Robert Hughes seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay. Hearing none. Kevin, if you'll read the roll, please.
Matt Tebow,
Yes.
James Cable,
Yes.
Vincent Rappuccillo,
Yes.
Joseph DeStefano,
Yes.
Joseph Toomey,
Yes.
Timothy DeRuiter,
Yes.
Robert Hughes,
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli,
Yes.
Joseph Palazola,
Yes.
Keith Wen,
Yes.
Michael Sabatino.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries with 11. We have one more. All right, I'll make this motion, Ben will read it. Go ahead. Ben.
That the documents titled Draft Scope, and Draft Notice of Intent to prepare a draft generic environmental impact statement for proposed amendments of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and the State Energy Conservation Construction Code be published on the New York State Department of State website, as well as in the Environmental Notice Bulletin for compliance with Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law, and that the Department of State shall receive public comments to the draft scope through until September 6, 2024.
Thank you, Ben. Again, I'm making that motion. May I have a second? Mayor DeStefano seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. Kevin, would you please?
Matt Tebow,
Yes.
James Cable,
Yes.
Vincent Rappuccillo,
Yes.
Joseph DeStefano,
Yes.
Joseph Toomey,
Yes.
Timothy DeRuiter,
Yes.
Robert Hughes,
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli,
Yes.
Joseph Palazola,
Yes.
Keith Wen,
Yes.
Michael Sabatino.
Yes.
Motion carries with 11. All right, thank you all, and Ben, thank you for ably sitting in for Penny Oda. Well done. Okay, with that done, I'm going to kind of jumping ahead, but I'll just say we're going to receive comments on this, obviously, as Ben pointed out, and it was in the motion until September 6th, because we're publishing on what, August 6th, right? 7th, that's it, right? So if we have to make changes to the draft scope, we will need another meeting to finalize those changes because we are now the lead agency, right? Right. Okay. So we will see if we need a September meeting or not. If we do, it will be for that specific purpose and will be in likely a very, very quick meeting. Okay. That ends that. Number 5, we're moving to agenda 6, public comment period. How many you got, Kevin?
Right now, we have 7.
7. Okay. We have we're going to give them 3 minutes, as we always do. We have the thing behind me now that shows it. I don't have to play around with the remote control, which is excellent. So Kevin, if you will call on the first one when you're ready. Thanks.
While I'm getting this up and running. I will mention, we did receive some written comments as recently as during the meeting. So what I'll do is we'll compile a PDF for the co-council members. And when we share the other information about what the votes contain in the summary, we'll include a PDF with all of the written comments that we've received. It's mostly letters of support from what I can see for the actions taken to start the process for election. Okay, so we have a speaking order. We have 7 people. I'll just read the order quickly and then I'll jump into it. We have Jed Prickett, Bill Nowak, Matthew Hunter, Benjamin Polanian, Steve McDaniel, Dottie Mazzarella, and Michael Foley. So we will start with Jed Prickett, and I will unmute you now. You should be unmuted. It appears as though they've remuted themselves. Hold on just a second. And now they're gone. Okay. I will come back to Jed if you take. So we'll start now with Bill Nowak. So Bill Nowak, you are unmuted.
Morning, Bill.
Morning, can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Great, great. I wanted to start just by saying thank you for all the work. It's amazing to see all these documents and it looks very promising. Had a question, which is, I didn't catch Emma's last name, but her comments seemed to be very much on point, and I'm wondering if they will be printed anywhere or if there's any way we can recover those comments and look at them more closely. It was good to hear that the comments that were submitted will be distributed. I had submitted some a couple days ago, and I hope folks have a chance to read them. You know, it's so important what you're doing. You hold the keys to addressing the sector of New York's economy that is most responsible for climate destabilizing greenhouse gas emissions. And we will be looking closely at how the documents that you filed today relate to the climate scoping plan provisions, and there needs to be a CLCPA determination on whether the code will interfere with New York's greenhouse gas reduction goals. It's my hope that what's been submitted really complies with those reduction goals and will lead to the reductions that we need. Obviously, with this having just been filed, I really haven't had a chance to look at what's been filed, but it looks really promising, and thank you for all the work.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin, who's next?
Up next, we have Matthew Hunter. Matthew, you should be unmuted. Try it again.
There we go. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen of the council, for the opportunity to speak today. And I'll echo Bill's sentiments there on the yeoman work that's been done thus far. You won't need that timer. I'll be very, very brief. I just want to encourage the council to review, to adopt in mass all of the associated mass timber changes that are in the IBC. There are approximately 17 changes, 14 that were done in Group A, and 3 that were done in Group B. And there are a comprehensive package that addresses life safety, building resiliency, fire resistance, and first responder access and egress and everything else. If there's any questions regarding that, or if any member of the council has questions, detailed questions on that, I'm consider myself a code expert. We helped the ICC draft the mass timber buildings and the IBC document that specifically relates to that. And I would be honored if you would consider me the technical resource and expert in New York for all things mass timber. I can put a quick link directly to our website that just is a landing page for everything that the ICC Tallwood Building and Ad Committee did on the changes and things like relevant fire testing. If any of the members of the fire service have questions, we're also the resource there for fire resistance and fire testing. So just urge you to adopt those in mass and not piecemeal, because if they're adopted piecemeal, they won't ensure the building and life safety mandates that the Tallwood Building Ad Hoc Committee works so hard to accomplish in those code changes. Thank you so much and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Kevin, who's next?
Next up, we have Benjamin Polanian. You should be unmuted.
And everyone. Okay, so I'm Benjamin Olanian, and I'm the new code coordinator for Region 2 of FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Also, I'm a registered architect in New York State, and also a certified code enforcement official in New York State as well. Right. So to reduce the cycle of destruction and rebuilding from natural disaster and man-made destructions, hazard-resistant building code is very essential. And for that, I thank New York State for being one of the states in the country that have adopted the latest building codes by ICC. So I'm just using this forum to introduce myself to all those AHJs in the state that that's a new code coordinator. I'm just like a bridge between FEMA and the AHJs, especially those ones that have adopted the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP. And we've encountered some things that in the process of this program, some people or some applicants, they apply for variances, and those variants that are granted by other by the agency, it affects the participation in the NFIP. So if you can just be referring them to us, to FEMA, especially me, because I'm the code coordinator, we can work alongside and make sure that they didn't lose the participation. And also to reintroduce some FEMA programs to the forums. We have a program like a BREAK, Building Resilience Infrastructure and Communities. We have a grant for Building Codes Up Plus. All these can be also be included in ordinances and regulations of those jurisdictions. So in effect, please include me in any of your communications, at least if you're working with the FEMA. And thank you very much for working with us all this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We welcome you to Region 2.
All right, next up, we have Steve McDaniel. Steve, you should be unmuted.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I again would echo the volumes of work that have been put into this. And I was glad to hear Chairman Tebow's introduction this morning, putting this out until March, not knowing what the timeline truly was going to be. Kind of made me nervous when I was looking at over 2,000 pages of information to try to review. It's still quite a bit to try to only do in 44 days by the September timeframe. And I know it's going to be a large amount of work for the Code Council members to review. One of the things, just briefly scrolling through the documents that I got this morning of note, is that there's some items that do appear to maybe exceed the authority or the ability of jurisdictions to do certain things. And that's mainly, again, I was only reviewing the chapter 1s dealing with when permits are required or repairs or things like that. And just be mindful to still allow those jurisdictions to do what they're authorized to do right now. Putting it in here actually would make it a code violation. And I would hope that the New York State building officials would provide that public comment in the future, at least by the 26th. But again, that's all I have for my initial comments. I was a little nervous that we had 2,000 pages or so, 2,054 pages to try to do public comment by the September 26th. I do wish that that was extended a little bit longer, but we'll see what we can do.
Thank you, Steve. Before you move on, I am gonna just correct that. I thought I had made this clear, but I'm gonna make it clear one more time. We are not going to see a notice of proposed rulemaking until November or December. So there is at least 120 to 150 days in there that we have before we will see and at the actual code books and a notice of proposed in the SAP process. September is the limited meeting where we would need to deal with seeker if it needs to be amended. So that's the plan moving forward. And then beyond that, again, March is the first date on which we could adopt. But that's 60 days. Right, and council makes an excellent point that I should also note that once we're into the SAP process, we have to follow that SAP process. There is another 60-day comment period that will run from whenever we finish in November, December, our voting to move forward. That will run probably in from December, January, and into February. And that comment will then be assessed, brought back to the council, leading into that March meeting. So 2 public comment periods. It's 60 days here, probably even extend that a little further because we're not going to see notice of proposed until November, December. And then another one in the winter, getting into that approval, adoption process. Okay.
Yeah, 2 more speakers left. Next up is Dottie Mazzarella. Meeting you now.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Can you hear me?
You can, Dottie. Good morning.
Great. Thank you very, very much. I just really wanted to come to second Chairman Tebow's comments that made earlier about the tremendous amount of work and the undertaking, Kevin's report and Emma's report, and I know the entire codes team, how hard they've been working. It also should be noted, this amount of work was also made easier because of their active participation in the code development process. You know, by having New York so actively participating, they're aware of the changes long before, you know, people that don't participate. So I just want the Code Council to just appreciate, and I know you do, but just that New York is such a leader, not just in New York, but on the national level. People, I watch at the hearings when the staff comes in, you know, they're people from other states are wanting to hear what's happening in New York and they're interested to hear. And so New York is really viewed as a leader on the national level. And I really think with this aggressive timeline you have, you may be the first state to get the 2024s implemented. So that makes me very proud. And I just wanted to offer any assistance I can provide, or anyone at the International Code Council, any of the technical staff, whatever you need, please know you will receive it. And I look forward to working with the council throughout this process. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dottie. And on behalf of the staff, we appreciate the close relationship that we have with ICC and how much help you have been as we move through this process.
Okay. Last on the list, we have Michael Foley. Unmuting now.
I'm not going to repeat a lot of what, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. Hey, good morning, everyone. So I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Benjamin Olenian just spoke about. I'm also here with FEMA Region 2. As Benjamin said, he's
Mr.
our.
Foley, can you speak up a little bit? We can barely hear you.
Yeah, I apologize. Is this any better?
That's better.
Okay. So again, I'm Mike Foley. I also work here at FEMA Region 2 with Benjamin. As Benjamin mentioned, he's our building code lead here at the region, and it's definitely a new priority for FEMA nationwide to try to improve and coordinate building code nationwide. So if there's anything we can do to help support New York State, please reach out to myself and Benjamin. I'll repeat something that Dottie just said as well. We appreciate listening in on these council meetings to learn and understand what New York's doing, because definitely are a leader in building codes and stuff that we can feed back to FEMA headquarters nationwide will help other regions support and implement and try to advance the adoption of hazard resistant building codes nationwide. So, but yeah, if there's anything you need, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. If there's anything FEMA Region 2 can do to help support New York State, but that's what we're here for. So appreciate the time to talk and I appreciate participating in this council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Kevin, are there any others? I don't have any. All right, now on the list, is there anyone else who wants to address the council today? All right, hearing none. I'm going to close public comment for the July meeting. That takes us to agenda item 7, future meetings. Now, as I've said probably 3 times now, we've got tentative dates on here, September 27th, December 6th. I can almost guarantee that those will not be the dates. We first of all need to make sure we have a quorum, and then second of all, we need to hit certain timeframes for seeker and then for staff up. So we're going to do our best to target in on the 1 or 2 or 3 dates that work, and then we'll be in touch with the council to figure out what days work for us as a council. As again, the September meeting, if we have it, will be an extremely limited agenda. It will only be for what will likely be a pretty quick motion and vote to change our scope. Other than that, we would be looking at around the Thanksgiving time. Okay, that will close for future meetings, open other business. Is there any other business to come before the council today? See anybody in the room or in the remote locations waving their hands. So I will just say thank you to staff and thank you to the members. I know you have, I guess I didn't know the number was 2,054 until Steve mentioned it. So you do have 2,054 pages ahead of you. I know that's an awfully big ask. I appreciate every comment that comes as you move through it. They will help us. Also to the public at large, please send in your comments in writing. That is very helpful to staff. It allows us to assess quickly and get that information back to the members themselves as they're moving through it as well. We are on this expedited time frame. We will likely be the first state to adopt this. I love the idea of being at the cutting edge of codes and safety. That's very important to this administration. So I'll stop there. Thank you all. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Joe seconds. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Everyone's